actually wrote this eulogy a while ago, and my grandpa was actually able to read it. I did a funeral project in high school where I was supposed to create a mock funeral, and I told him about how I did this funeral for my friend, and he really, really liked the idea, so I wrote a eulogy for him, and I sent it to my grandma. So she was able to read it to him. Are you ready to? So Joseph Cherry was my grandfather. I called him Grandpa or Grandpa Joe to differentiate him from my other grandparents. I have a lot of grandparents. When I was very little, I was shy. I wasn't comfortable with other people for a number of reasons. Beyond my parents, there weren't many adults I was able to open up and talk to, but one of the first people I felt comfortable around was my grandpa. I used to stay over at his house for weekends at a time. Never once do I remember him lecturing to me. He never talked at me, he talked to me. When he spoke to me, he never told a story and then explained the lesson or the moral like I wasn't smart enough to figure it out on my own. He asked me questions beyond yes or no and made me feel that whatever I said in response was important. Whether the answer came from a 4-year-old or an 18-year-old, my answer was just as valid. I was a shy child, I was quiet and couldn't look anyone in the eyes, but he would stand there and look at me and ask me questions. He expected not just an answer, but a good one. He made me feel like that I had to say what was important. Because he never looked down on me or thought he was smarter than me or above me or anything more than me. I felt I could say anything to him. I felt close enough to him to give him this eulogy before he died. My grandfather never expected any less of me than anything he could do. He was never very good at empathy, which was something my twin sister got from him. He was the most honest, candor person I know. When I was little and would complain of a stomach ache, he would ask, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" Of course, I would say no, and then he would tell me to deal with it. It's not bad enough to be of importance. As long as I can remember, he tried to convince me that Santa Claus wasn't real. Of course, I didn't know it at the time, but through his honesty, he gave me so much strength. I learned how to stand up for myself, to not let words get to me, and to use them to my strength and to pay attention. When in an argument, paying attention to the detail, it took me a long time to learn how to pay attention. But when I did, I noticed every detail. My grandfather was a tough man. He was an athlete. He rode bikes as long as he could. He took on a turkey trot every Thanksgiving. He swam in the ocean, in the pool with all his grandchildren. He was a speaker. He stood up and made toasts and speeches at every occasion. And he announced as tough as he could, with his chest out and his glass high in the air, how much he loved his family. Embarrassment caught him in his later years. They would cry over a lost brother or father or how much he loved his wife. But he never sat down when the tears came or the Parkinson's shook his legs and made it hard to stand, or when he could no longer see where it was he was standing, when his eyes went blind. Grandpa loved grandmother's cooking more than anything. He would rather stay home and eat her overcooked everything when he saw. He always complimented the food he ate at every meal. He's always so proud of my accomplishments. He watched my videos every time I posted one online. He hung all my drawings and paintings on the wall of his house and pointed out that his grandchildren made these art pieces. He opened my Pinocchio painting on Christmas. He was blind at the time and everyone knew, but he hadn't told us. He had been asking for a Pinocchio painting to hang on the wall. He unwrapped the painting and stared at it and then shouted, "I love it!" He turned to Grandma sitting beside him and asked in pretty much a stage whisper that could be heard across the room, "What is it?" Grandma explained that it was Pinocchio. He asked for it. It grew across his face, and he shouted much louder this time, "I love it!" They called me a few days later and told me that they had hung the painting across from him so he could see it from his chair at the dinner table. I arrived at the house that weekend and looked all around the room and could not not find the painting. I asked where it was. Grandma walked over and pointed to the corner of the room behind the television. I proceeded to sit in every chair in the room until I was sitting in Grandpa's chair. The only place in the room we could see my painting was my grandfather's chair, who was blind. He had the same stories he liked to tell over and over. Somehow the moral kept changing. One story he liked to tell about how his brother and him used to hang out at this wall. He was smart and never fell off the wall. But his brother did. He broke his hand and tried to hide it from his mom until the pain became too much and he got in trouble. He would say, "That's why you listen to your mother." Or, "Be smart and don't fall off the wall." But, "Don't push your brother off the wall." Even though it's funny, it's not nice. He liked to tell us how much harder it was for him as a child than it was for us. He told a story a few times how they didn't have those fancy ice rinks back in his day. Instead, they used a pond in his backyard. And if the ice wasn't thick enough, they would fall in. My grandmother would walk in, usually from the kitchen, and tell me it was wrong. They did have ice rinks when they were kids. It was just cheap, pay to use one. My grandpa brought my sisters and me to a few places every time we went to visit. We would go to the aquarium, or the zoo, or the botanical garden for a picnic. He's always too cheap to buy food, so we would bring the same lunch with him every time. We ate canned chicken and rice crackers with apples and cheese. It took me a long time to learn how to pay attention to notice the same memories. My grandpa gave me so many memories, but beyond that, he gave me my voice. He gave me strength. He gave me acceptance, and he gave me love.